Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and in today's video we have a new chip strategy video, an updated one, and it's mainly because of the double game week 32 announcement that was made in the lead up to the double game week 25 deadline. So that was huge news at that point in time, and there was a lot of scrambling, a lot of chaos. But now that it's been a while since the announcement, we've had some time to digest the information. I've had a bit of time to process my thoughts as well, and I've put everything together in today's video. So hopefully you enjoy it, and if you do, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well. And let's start off with the double game week 32 announcement. So if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard of it yet, Newcastle and Crystal Palace will double in game week 32. So the fixture that is moved into game week 32 is the Crystal Palace Newcastle fixture that was initially scheduled for game week 29, but Newcastle can no longer play in game week 29 because they are involved in the EFL Cup finals against Liverpool. So basically that fixture in 29 has shifted to game week 32. All of us thought that this Newcastle Crystal Palace fixture would move to game week 33 instead, giving game week 33 an even bigger double than what we imagined. But right now, with this kind of fixture being moved to game week 32, it sets a bit of precedence and also makes future double game week predictions very difficult. So I'll touch on that in a bit, but at least for double game week 32, what we're going to see for Newcastle is Manchester United at home and Crystal Palace at home. For Crystal Palace, it's quite difficult, this double. It's Manchester City away and Newcastle away. So very obviously, Newcastle have the better double here, but I would imagine that simply because both teams are doubling, that we would want at least a good number of assets from each of these teams. So as we go along with these different pointers, I will kind of elaborate a little bit. So the first point that I have here is how this sets a bit of a precedence. So Newcastle versus Crystal Palace being shifted to a Champions League midweek, which is basically game week 32, it does make future double game week predictions very difficult. It's simply because in previous seasons, this has not happened. Whether or not the teams are involved in Europe or not, usually the Premier League does not like to kind of clash the Champions League midweeks with Premier League fixtures. So they try to avoid the Champions League midweeks. But now, with this being the case, we see that maybe the Premier League is no longer kind of opposed to putting fixtures into Champions League midweeks if both teams are out of Europe. So it brings me to my next point, where future postponements, given that this is the precedence, can also move to Champions League midweeks if both teams are out of Europe and carry on in this kind of same fashion. So Ben Crellin has also come out to say on Twitter that this kind of makes the future double game week predictions very, very difficult. He's quite uncertain of the landscape moving forward after kind of game week 32 already. So looking at the other pointers that I have here, double game week 33 may not be as big as imagined, and it's mainly because the Crystal Palace Newcastle fixture is no longer in 33. It has moved now to 32, possibly making double game week 33 a smaller double than we imagine, but it is also very likely that it will still be the biggest double game week this season. So that will have huge implications on chip strategy that we'll talk about later on. As for game week 36, it is likely going to still be a double game week, but it'll probably be a rather small double game week. The last point that I have here, there's no real changes to blank game week predictions, and it's mainly because the reason why there will be blanks in those game weeks still stay, in that game week 29 will blank because of the EFL Cup finals, and game week 34 there will be blanks, and it's simply because of the FA Cup semi-finals. So those will still be blank game weeks, 29 and 34, and they should be the only blank game weeks remaining. So aside from this kind of announcement here, I'm going to put up the Ben Crellin fixture spreadsheet here for a while as I just go through very quickly. So again, obviously credits to Ben Crellin. If you aren't following him on Twitter, please do go ahead and drop him a follow. He is going to be helping you navigate these next few game weeks. So on screen, as you guys can see from the graphic by Ben Crellin, 29 will be a blank game week. Going into game week 32, that will be the double that's just been announced for Newcastle and Crystal Palace. Game week 33 is also likely to still be a double game week. And then we see the blank in 34. That's because of the FA Cup semi-finals. Aside from that, the next game week to note is actually game week 35. There is a possibility that there could be a double game week there, but that's mainly because we've said that there is a precedence that's being set right now that future postponements can move to a Champions League midweek, which is game week 35, if both teams are out of Europe. Aside from that, double game week 36 remains likely to be a double game week. 37 could see a couple of blanks, but is unlikely, and it's more likely that either fixtures would stay in 37 or move to 36. Aside from that, hopefully this kind of clears the landscape of FPL moving forward, albeit we don't really know for certain what's going to happen, but at least it gives us a kind of picture as to something to work with our chip strategies. So let's now take a look at the next section where I discuss a bit of my thoughts on how this implicates chip strategy. So moving on to some chip strategy thoughts, I want to kind of elaborate a little bit on how this double game week 32 announcement impacts chip strategy. So firstly, for those who have already used your assistant manager, I don't think double game week 32 changes your chip strategy too much. Obviously, for those who still have your assistant manager with you, I will address that group in the later points of this section, but at least for those who have already used it, double game week 32 doesn't change too much. Basically, if you are on a free hit 29 strategy from long before, you basically can still keep your Newcastle and Crystal Palace players throughout until you free hit in 29, you lose them. You have a free hit squad without these Newcastle and Crystal Palace players, obviously without the Aston Villa and Liverpool players who will also blank. So you get a fresh squad and you have, 11 playing players in your free hit 29. Then in 30, you would basically get your original squad back, and that would have your Newcastle and your Crystal Palace players. So that can still be the case, and it obviously sets you up for game week 32 nicely because you would already have your Newcastle and Crystal Palace ready to go. As for the wildcard 30 strategy, which is to dead end to game week 29 and then wildcard in game week 30 instead, you basically can carry on selling your Newcastle and Crystal Palace players in 29 and then buy them back in 30, ready for the double game week 32 as well. So I don't think in this respect that double game week 32 changes too much. We can stick to our existing strategies for those who have already used your assistant manager. It is simply that Crystal Palace and Newcastle will be doubling 1 week earlier. Now, my chip strategy, given that I've already used my assistant manager, is still going to be something like wildcarding in game week 30 or 31. I say 30 or 31, but I think it's more likely I'll do it in 30. And then bench boost in 33 because that is likely going to be the biggest double game week still. And then free hit in game week 34. Now, I still prefer this strategy over free hitting in game week 29 that I know some of you guys are going for. And it's simply because I think the game week 34 blank is going to be more tricky to navigate because the teams that double in 33 are likely going to blank in 34. Not all of them, but some of the teams that double in 33 will blank in 34. So going by that kind of thought process, if I'm bench boosting in 33, I'm likely going to have a lot of players from teams that are doubling, and that will basically make it tricky for me to navigate game week 34. So I prefer to just use the free hit then, not have to think about that blank, and carry on kind of optimizing all the other game weeks. So that's why I'm still firmly on this kind of wildcard 30, bench boost 33, and free hit 34 strategy. But that's not to say that the free hit 29 strategy can't work as well, and I'll cover that in the next section. Now, to address those of you still with the assistant manager chip, I think the most important thing right now is that you have to weigh out the pros and cons of which chip you want activated in game week 33. Now, if you want to have the assistant manager activated through game week 33, maybe you activate it in game week 31, for example, you get 31, which is a single game week, you get 32, which is a double game week, and you get 33, which is also a double game week. That gives you 5 fixtures for your assistant manager, but the trade-off is that you can't bench boost in game week 33, which is likely going to be the biggest double, right? So there's going to be pros and cons. Maybe you gain a fixture in the assistant manager chip, but you the trade-off is you can't bench boost. The other way around is true as well, where if you bench boost in 33, maybe you lose a fixture for the assistant manager as well. So there's going to be trade-offs that you have to weigh, and there will be kind of a priority structure where you have to kind of decide which chip you want to prioritize for 33, in which case, when I'm thinking about it kind of big picture, it feels as if there is some value in maybe giving consideration to lose a fixture on the assistant manager just to bench boost in 33 instead. So at least if I am in the boat where I have the assistant manager still available to me, I might go for a strategy that still allows me to bench boost in 33. So we'll chat about the possible strategies for those with the AM still available in the next section. The last pointer here is a general pointer for everyone. Since Double Game Week 36 could turn out to be very small, I would honestly try not to bank on it. I won't try to kind of make my chip strategies dependent on Double Game Week 36 being big. I would try as much as possible to expand all my chips around the Game Week 29 to Game Week 34 mark. We are pretty certain of what's going to happen during that time period, and with more certainty, it means that we can plan a little bit more decisively and make more aggressive transfers during this period as well. So I would honestly recommend to have your chips expanded during this period and try not to bank on Double Game Week 36. Though, even though I say this, I know it might be tricky for those of you with so many of your chips available. I've seen some teams with all your chips still remaining. It is going to be tricky, and maybe you can't afford to not bank on 36, but I would say for those or the wider majority of people who have already used at least both your triple captain and your assistant manager, try as best as possible to expand most of your chips during this kind of Game Week 29 to Game Week 34 period. So finally, we're going to discuss what you guys are here for, which is the recommended chip strategies now that we know that Double Game Week 32 has been announced. So looking at the kind of 5 bubbles here, I've kind of separated it into a top section as well as a bottom section. The top applies to those of you guys who have already used your assistant manager chip. The bottom here, the yellow, gray, and orange bubbles, apply to those of you guys who still have your assistant manager chip available to you. So I'll cover the top bubbles first, the blue and the green bubble. And this, again, are for those with your assistant manager chip already used. So these are the 2 most popular strategies that I think people would adopt if you've already used your AM. So firstly, it's the free hit 29 strategy. So this is to kind of keep your Liverpool, Aston Villa, Newcastle and Crystal Palace players in your existing squad. So basically you free hit in 29 to kind of lose them for a little bit, but once 30 comes around, from Game Week 30 onwards, you would have these kind of Newcastle, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, Liverpool players back in your squad already, ready for you to take on Double Game Week 32 and also 33. Now that's the free hit 29 strategy. It also allows you to then bench boost in 33, and then you can obviously use the wild card to kind of navigate the big blank in 34. Now, wild card in 34 may not be super popular because it's a blank game week. Some people would rather use it in, at least a single game week, in which case you could delay a little bit if possible to game week 35. But what I'd say again is that, bench boost 33 and then having no chips in 34 is going to be tricky to navigate. So wildcard 34 is not the worst thing in the world because there are fixtures that are already confirmed for Game Week 34 that are pretty decent. So Liverpool will be playing Spurs in Game Week 34. That's confirmed. Everton as well as Chelsea is a fixture that's also confirmed for Game Week 34. So it's not too bad to kind of build your wildcard 34, at least based off of players from these teams, and then kind of continue to add on as we get more confirmation of the blanks in 34. So basically, it's not the worst thing in the world to wildcard in the blank game week if that is your strategy in the blue bubble there. The next strategy is the one that I'm on, which is the green bubble, which is a wildcard 30/31. So again, I think it's more likely that we wildcard in 30 because we probably will want the Newcastle as well as the Crystal Palace assets back into our teams already. So 30 you wildcard, you bench boost in 33, which is still, again, likely going to be the biggest double of this season. And then you free hit in 34 to deal with the teams that will blank in 34. Again, as I've mentioned, it's likely those teams are the ones that are also doubling in 33. So it's a tricky situation to navigate there, but at least this green bubble helps to navigate that, and that's the one I'm on. As for these three strategies at the bottom here, it applies to those still with your assistant manager chip still available. Now, I'll cover the yellow as well as the gray bubble, and it's basically an adaptation of the blue bubble at the top. Basically, it tries to include or fit in the assistant manager where relevant. So you still stick with your free hit in 29 for both the yellow and the green bubble. But basically, when you play your assistant manager, dictates how many fixtures you're getting and also whether you can bench boost in 33 or not. So I'll cover the yellow bubble first. Free hitting in 29. This is again to deal with the Aston Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle, Crystal Palace blank. And then your assistant manager in game week 30. Now, bearing in mind, as your assistant manager in game week 30, you would lose a fixture. You won't have 5 fixtures because 30 is a single game week, 31 is also a single game week, and 32 is a double game week. So you will get only 4 fixtures, as opposed to if you're assistant manager in game week 31, where you would get 5 fixtures. So that is the trade-off for this yellow bubble. But what this yellow bubble strategy allows you to do is bench boost in 33, because by the time game week 33 comes around, your assistant manager chip would have been used up. The 3 game weeks of 30, 31, and 32 would have been over, allowing you to still bench boost in 33. And then obviously you wildcard in 34 or 35, depending on when you need it. Now, I've kind of made a bit of a note there at the bottom of the yellow bubble. You get to bench boost in the biggest double game week. That's the good thing about this strategy, but you lose a fixture for the AM. As opposed to, you're looking at the gray bubble now, you free hit in 29, you AM in 31. AM in 31 gives you the full 5 fixtures for your assistant manager, because 32 and 33 will both be doubles. And then you wildcard in 34 or 35, depending on when you need to use it. That can also help to navigate your blank game week 34. But thereafter, you bench boost in 36. And again, this strategy hinges on you bench boosting in a game week that we've said might be pretty small. So you get maximum double game week capitalization. You basically get a lot of fixtures for all your chips, but your bench boost may not be used well, because as we've said, bench boosting in game week 36 may not be super ideal, given that there won't be as many teams doubling. Now, that's for the yellow as well as the gray bubble. Now, the orange bubble here is an adaptation of the green bubble as above. So you wildcard in 30, and it has to be 30 in this case because you will assistant manager in game week 31. This will give you 5 fixtures for the assistant manager, because in 31 it's a single game week, 32 and 33 that will be double game week. So you get 5 fixtures for your assistant manager. You then free hit in 34 to deal with the blank, and then you bench boost in 36. So the good thing about this, again, maximum double game week capitalization, but your bench boost may not be well used. And on top of that, the downside of this strategy is that you will be bench boosting very far away from your wildcard. It would be 6 game weeks later from the time you wildcard that you use your bench boost, which again may not be ideal, because generally you would need your wildcard to help you set up for the bench boost. It's not impossible to kind of have your bench boost so far away from your wildcard. It just will be slightly trickier. So there's pros and cons again to a lot of the strategies that we see here. But again, very team dependent as to which one applies best for your teams. And I've tried to kind of compartmentalize this section here into those of you guys with your assistant manager and those of you guys without. So when you look at these strategy bubbles here, let me know in the comments down below, which group of people do you fall under? Do you still have your AM with you or not? And if you have or you don't have, then which bubble are you correspondingly choosing? I'd be keen to know. But again, as I've mentioned, I myself am on the green bubble at the top right there. Wildcard 30, bench boost 33, free hit 34. So there we go with the recommended chip strategies. I'd be keen to kind of discuss a little bit in the comments as well, interact with you guys. So if you have other thoughts and strategies, let me know in the comments. If not, I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you did enjoy it, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well. And I will catch you guys in more Game Week 26 content coming very soon. Bye-bye.